All right, looking at the fourth part of 11.1, it says completely factor by grouping. Um, Students often ask, how do I know when to do factoring by grouping? And my hint to them at this level is that it will usually tell you to do factoring by grouping. But another hint that you might want to try the factoring by grouping is when you see four terms are present. So what we're going to do here to factor by grouping is we're going to make two groups or make two binomials to get started. So I'm going to just group the first two items and then the second two items into binomials. And then I'm going to look at each group individually and factor out a GCF, which we practiced plenty before. So I see that there's a common X here. Okay, you spot that common X. So I'm going to pull that X out front of that binomial and I'm left with Y plus Z. Okay, then looking at this one, I see a common W. So when I factor out that common W, I like to say, okay, I'm factoring out a positive W, okay? And then I'm left with Y plus Z, okay? So then we can think back to problem 3 in these notes and we can say, well, hey, there's a common binomial right there, common binomial. So I'm going to pull out my common binomial out front, if that's where you like to put your common binomial. And then I'm going to put the leftovers in the back. Okay? And if you check this with FOIL, if you check with FOIL, I promise you it's going to work. Okay, you can just see here y times x is going to equal xy. Y times w equals wy. There's wy. Z times x, xz. And then z times z times w, wz. Okay, so it works. All right, let's try this next one here to try the factoring by grouping. Okay, so kind of get a rhythm of these. Make two groups, factor the GCF of the two groups so I can see a common x. So I'm going to pull that x out front and I'm left with x plus 3. Here I can see that these are both even. So I'm going to pull out a positive 2 and I'm left with x plus 3. Okay. And then I see my common binomial. Remember what I said earlier, that some students like to put the common binomial at the back side of the problem and put the leftovers at the front of the problem. That works out just fine. Okay. So, in this first one, we pulled the common binomial out front. The second one, we wrote the common binomial. But you got to think about, you have to have the common and then leftover terms, okay? Or vice versa. You could write it as x plus 3, x plus 2. Remember, commutative property, okay? All right, let's look at this C here, and then we'll do the other 3 in another video. So I'll make my two groups. Something slightly different happens on this one. I can already spot it, probably because I've done thousands of these. But when I make this second binomial here, I'm spotting this negative. But let's work on this first one. I pull out an x. I got x plus 5. Okay. Now in this binomial, remember when we factor GCF, if we see the first term has a negative, we should pull a negative out. So I'm going to pull a negative 3, and I'm left with x plus 5 from pulling that negative sign out. Okay. I'm going to bring my common binomial out front. Common. And then what was left? X minus 3. All right. And there is factoring by grouping. Okay. let's take a look at the last three in another video. Thanks.